Welcome back to Scroll and Strategy. Today, we leave the muddy battlefields of the continent and take to the high seas, where empires are won and lost with timber, canvas, and cannon. In Empire Total War, controlling the oceans is key to global domination. A powerful navy protects your trade, projects your power across continents, and strangles your enemies by blocking their ports. But to rule the waves, you must first master your fleet. Over this guide, we'll dissect every major ship class from the swift frigate to the colossal first rate. We'll explore their historical purpose and, more importantly, how to command them to victory in the game's spectacular naval battles. So, raise the anchor, run out the guns, and prepare to command the most powerful fleets of the 18th century.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
The Age of Sail was also the Age of Plunder, and for this, navies and privateers alike relied on light, fast ships, while smaller vessels like sloops and brigs were excellent for coastal patrols and carrying dispatches. The undisputed queen of this class was the frigate. Frigates were the ultimate cruisers of the day. They were fast enough to escape from larger ships of the line, but powerfully armed enough to outgun any merchant vessel or privateer. They were the eyes of the fleet and the bane of enemy trade, capable of operating for months or even years on end far from their home ports. One notable ship of this type is that of the USS Constitution, a heavy 44-gun frigate and one of America's first ships of the United States Navy through the Naval Act of 1794 to combat the Barbary pirates. Fun fact, the United States Navy also maintains the Constitution Grove, a 50,000-acre forest near Bloomington, Indiana, to be able to maintain and repair her if she ever needs. She is the world's oldest commissioned warship still afloat. Sorry British, the HMS Victory is dry docked for life. In-game, these vessels are not the meat and potatoes of your fleet, but rather your light infantry on the water. They tend to have less guns than your ship of the line, but what they lack for in firepower, they make up for in maneuverability. It's not the amount of cannons, but rather how you use them. Our light ships include things such as light and regular galleys. These are recruitable only by eastern factions and those with access to the Mediterranean Sea. They can be decent due to being powered by wind and oar, so if you are leeward, then you can still move your vessel. The poor thing about galleys is that they are incredibly light, and one broadside from a larger vessel will pretty much knock them out of the fight. They have a limited firepower ranging from 4 to 26 guns and have a hull strength under 1,100. They basically can be cannon fodder. The next batch of light ships are brigs, sloops, carronade frigates, rays, and steamships. Let's crack open the brigs to start. These are everywhere. No matter who you are, you can make a brig, coming in at 26 guns, with the largest range of 500, decent hull strength, and incredible maneuverability. Brigs are decent investment, however, not all investments are foolproof. The brig holds a weakness. She has a low profile, meaning her crew is largely exposed to items such as round shot and musket fire. This can spell disaster for your brigs, especially with a close-range grape shot. Next, we have our sloops. They provide a higher hull strength than the brig and increased maneuverability. Able to do a 180-degree turn if you have the wind in your favor, but these come at a devastating cost, her guns. They are fewer than the brig with only 18, and her additional protection means she has less teeth to sink the enemy. Now, we come to the mid-range of our light ships, the carronade frigate. Now, this vessel requires the carronade technology to be able to be built, and offers 24 guns with a decent hull strength of over 2,500, and high maneuverability. The carronade is a short-barreled muzzle-loading cannon that can be placed on the top deck of a ship. Historically, this is different than, say, Old Ironsides, which is a standard frigate, but larger ships also carried carronade-type cannons. For instance, the HMS Victory. But enough about a type of cannon. The only downside to this ship is that you are required to get the carronade technology to be able to build her. She is as agile as a 6th rate and has more teeth. These are early great game, but once 4th rates start rolling out, she's going to be outmatched and outgunned. Next, we have the Rays. She's essentially a 3rd rate with one of her deck guns sawn off. She stands between a proper ship of the line and a 3rd rate and a frigate. She holds 48 guns with a medium hull rating and maneuverability. Rays can be good ships to have, but once you unlock the technology to build her, you could be building heavy 1st-rate ships, which outmatch and outgun her. Rays have their place in the Navy even after 1st rates start being produced. She can hunt down and sink the enemy's fleeing ships during your naval battles. Our last light ship is the steamship. They're fun to have, but very limited usage in my opinion, due to the fact that they are prone to explode due to the steam engine inside them. Not something that's befitting a warship. She does hold 34 guns and has less hull strength than a Rays, but it has a higher maneuverability. In all, these are pretty ships that can be nice to look at, and you lose a portion of your broadside due to the paddle wheel on each side. Your only saving grace is that you can really maneuver without the wind with these, that's about it. While our light ships can harass and be the starting point for a grander fleet, eventually the battles at sea will sink one with a single broadside. To stop that, you need the Titans of the Sea, the floating fortresses known as ships of the line.
Give that bitch a cannon. Bitches love cannons.
The line of battle was a defining naval tactic of the 18th century. Perfected by powers like the British Royal Navy, the strategy involved forming a fleet into a single cohesive line, allowing each ship to bring its full broadside to bear on the opposing fleet while minimizing its own exposure. The ships designed for this brutal, punishing warfare were massive vessels classified by a rate system based on their number of cannons. First and second rates carrying 90 to over 100 guns on 3 decks were the flagships of the fleet. They were incredibly expensive symbols of national power, floating fortresses that could endure astonishing punishment. The true backbone of any navy, however, was the third rate, typically a 74-gun ship which offered a perfect balance of firepower, durability, and maneuverability. Fourth rates and below were generally considered too weak to stand in the main line against top-tier opponents and were often relegated to convoy escort or colonial patrols. One of the most well-known first rates is that of the HMS Victory, a 104-gun first rate, Lord Nelson's flagship that led the charge at Trafalgar and dashing any hope of the French gaining naval dominance during the. She is the world's oldest naval vessel, still in commission at over 240 years of service. For in-game usage, ships of the line are built for one purpose: to deliver and withstand cataclysmic broadsides. Your core tactic should be to form a line and keep it disciplined. The key to victory is focused firing, having multiple ships of yours target a single enemy ship, starting at the front of their line and working your way down. This will shatter and rout their ships one by one. Use your heaviest first and second rates as powerful anchors in the center of your line. Be warned, they turn like floating castles, so you must plan your maneuvers well in advance. Your goal is to achieve the ultimate naval maneuver, crossing the T. This involves sailing your line across the front of your enemy's line, allowing your ships to fire their full broadsides down the length of the enemy vessels from bow to stern, where their armor is the weakest and they can bring the fewest guns to bear in response. Or you could be like Lord Nelson and just charge at him and break the line in two. The rate system goes from the 6th rate all the way up to the 1st rate, with the 6 being the least gun but most maneuverable, to the heavy 1st rate being the most gun and least maneuverable. We're going to start at the bottom with our heavy hitters. The 6th rate vessel is the smallest ship of the line. She is slower and less agile than a brig, but she makes up for it in firepower and hull strength. She carries 32 guns and has a hull strength of just over 2,000, with a high maneuverability. She is reliable in early game, and a more skilled seaman could use her to fire a broadside, capture the wind, and swing around for a second one on an enemy vessel.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
A less skilled seaman could use her to run down fleeing enemy vessels. In all, 6th rates are good in early game, but if she is used later, her light crew number and lighter hull compared to other ships in the line will leave her outmatched and outgunned. Our 5th rate provides additional firepower with 48 guns, increased hull strength, and still decent maneuverability. She can conduct the same skilled maneuvers as a 6th rate. She is inexpensive yet decently powerful for the early game. She can be used to capture pirate galleons to bolster your numbers. When she is pitted against heavier ships, utilize her range to cripple the sails and then move in on the stern or bow to hammer away at their lighter gun ports and armor. She should not engage anything from a 3rd rate or above, as her lighter hull, guns, and small crew will be her downfall. Moving up to the 4th rate, we continue to gain more guns, giving us 58 in total and a hull strength of just over 4,000 with an average maneuverability. She is more powerful than a 5th rate, but these improvements make her slower and more cumbersome at sea, giving a little advantage from the power gain. Sadly, she is redundant once 3rd rates become available due to her large disadvantages. The 3rd rate is probably the most well-balanced of all ships of the line, coming in at 74 guns with a stronger hull at 4,800 with an average maneuverability. She outmatches the 4th rates with an increased guns and hull strength while keeping the same maneuverability. She is a solid choice for a bulk of your fleet, even mid to late game. She can stand up against 2nd rates, and 2 or more could even sink a 1st rate of the line. Our 2nd rate is a continued natural progression of the rate system, increased guns and hull strength, coming in with 86 guns and a hull strength of almost 7,000, but she has a low maneuverability. It is notable that her guns have a worse accuracy and reloading skill than a third rate. Her Achilles heel is her weight. With her low maneuverability, it is possible for her to be outmatched by a third rate, even with the improved hull and additional guns. Sticking to a third rate will allow your fleet to outmaneuver your enemy at sea. We're almost reaching the end of our rates. Second to our last is our first rate, an incredibly powerful presence at sea, but she comes with a hefty price tag. She carries 106 guns and has a hull strength of just over 8,500, but she is a slow beast. Her poor maneuverability might be seen as a weakness, but unless you cripple her sails with a single broadside, you could obliterate a lighter vessel. To take her out, you need to keep your distance, cripple her sails, and then hit her from all sides. Due to the technology requirements, cost, and upkeep, she's a rarity to see in the late game. Our last ship of the line is the heavy first rate. She carries over 120 guns and has a hull strength of over 10,000. As we've seen, increased hull strength and guns provide us with a slow maneuverability. She is a behemoth at sea, and utterly slow, expensive to build and maintain, costing almost 1,000 gold a turn in upkeep. Her only weakness at sea is artillery ships. Historically, the Santismia Trinidad and the USS Pennsylvania are real-world examples of these ships, 3 decks and over 120 guns per. That wraps it up for our ships of the line, but not every naval problem can be solved with a broadside. For unique challenges like bombarding a port, you can call upon the artillery vessels. Naval warfare in this period also saw a rise in highly specialized ships. The bomb ketch was a curious vessel, often having its foremast removed to make room for 1 or 2 massive mortars. Its entire hull was heavily reinforced with extra timber to withstand the violent, deck-shattering recoil of these large siege weapons, making it a dedicated coastal bombardment platform. At the other end of the spectrum was the rocket ship, a British invention that mounted Congreve rocket launchers. These weapons were notoriously inaccurate, but were devastatingly effective as a terror weapon, used to set fire to entire fleets and cities, most famously at the bombardment of Fort McHenry, where America gained her national anthem in defense of the British attack during the War of 1812. Each of these specialty ships is a tactical problem solver, but they are fragile and must be protected. Bomb ketches will be the first artillery ship we gain access to in the campaign. They are basically a sloop that are reinforced to deal with the power of the mortar they utilize. They have a decent accuracy and incredible range of 750. They are best kept behind the line and protected at sea. They can be utilized to take out heavier ships of the line with their explosive shot. They can take out an enemy crew or even start a fire on board, dropping morale quickly, leading to an abandoned enemy ship or even cause to explode. Her weakness is her forward-facing firing position and low maneuverability, which can be an issue if she needs to escape. Protect her at sea and she can be utilized effectively to give your navy an advantage. Rocket ships are our second artillery ship. She requires the explosive rocket technology to be built, and she has the same accuracy and range as our bomb ketches, but they are more effective than a bomb ketch. She still has the forward-facing problem that the ketch does, but her explosive rockets are overpowering for enemy ships to deal with. She has a greater ability to set ships ablaze and even explode them at sea. Just like the bomb ketch, keep her protected and utilize that massive range and her rockets to devastate enemy ships of the line. Our navy isn't just going to be compromised of ships of the line and other large vessels to fight enemy navies. We still have to discuss our trade vessels.
Fucking lobsters for money.
Historically, trade ships like the Indiaman could resemble ships of the line in both their general configuration and paintwork. This gave them the ability to not just use their cannons for protection, but a cunning captain could make his Indiaman look like a ship of the line. For instance, during the Battle of Palo Ora in 1804, British Commodore Nathaniel Dance of the East India Company had a fleet of 29 Indiamen and a single brig. His opponent, French Admiral Charles Alexandre, was sailing with a fleet of 1 ship of the line, 2 frigates and a corvette and a brig, obviously outgunning and outmanning the British forces. Commodore Dance utilized aggressive maneuvering, placing his ships in a battle line formation and raising flags, providing the suggestion that his fleet included parts of the Royal Navy. This response unsettled Charles Alexandre, so much that he retreated his fleet. Dance continued the ruse, pursuing up to 2 hours until he knew his ships were safe. From this cunning action, the Commodore received a knighthood from King George III. Trade ships in Empire Total War are the only vessels that can interact with trade nodes. They can be supported by other ships for additional defense of a trade node, but only the trade ships will move the goods to your home region. For a more in-depth breakdown of trade ships and how they work, check out my economic overview video where we break down the return on investments of our trade ships. First up is our typical Western trade ship, the Indiaman. She holds 12 guns and has a hull strength of just under 2,000 with an average maneuverability. She is not meant to go toe-to-toe with an additional ship. Her guns are merely for protection purposes. Their crew consists of no Marines on board and are horrible in combat. Her sole purpose is to make you money, not fight your wars. As I mentioned in my economic overview video, I will run 6 of these in a single trade fleet with additional support to protect against any wars I might get into, or just because those damn pirates decide to touch my trade node. Next we have the Flute, specifically a Dutch trading vessel and capable fighting vessel. She holds 42 guns and has a hull strength of almost 4,500 with an average maneuverability. She does provide a bonus to anyone playing as the Dutch as she is capable of defending herself in battle, negating the need to send additional warships with your trade fleet. However, she does cost twice as much to produce and is an additional 190 coins per turn in upkeep. Just to provide a comparison of 2 fleets that will carry the same amount of goods back, so even number of trade ships, but the Indiaman fleet will hold 3 additional brigs. Fleet 1 is comprised of 6 flutes and Fleet 2 is comprised of 6 Indiamen and 3 brigs for additional firepower. Overall, Fleet 1 costs 3,360 more gold to produce than Fleet 2 and cost almost twice as much in upkeep. But when we look at the combat comparison, we will see that Fleet 1 gains 102 more guns, its total hull strength is almost double that of Fleet 2, but on average the accuracy, reloading skill, and speed is reduced for an additional 3,360 gold for production and an additional 630 gold per turn upkeep. You will just get 102 more guns and an additional 11,000 hull strength. Using my previous spreadsheet for my trade video, let's assume that we're sending both fleets to the East Indies because we're the Dutch and we like spices. We can see that 6 trade ships will have a cargo capacity of 17 per ship. Assuming 13 gold per cargo capacity, because that's the last time I used the spreadsheet, we can see that Fleet 1 will not only take an additional 3 turns to pay off, but we also are not going to be making any money. Remember though that the price of commodities, like spices, do change per turn. The lowest we could do and have that fleet return any money is 15 gold. When looking at Fleet 2, we are not only getting a return after 5 turns, but we will be making more than half of the upkeep back per turn. In my opinion, I don't run flutes. I prefer to run my 6 Indiaman and brig combination, but to each their own. Our next trade ship is the Galleon, specifically for Spain. She's incredibly powerful and even more expensive than the flute. She runs at 58 guns and has a hull strength of over 4,500. She costs more than a flute as well. We can assume the same issue from our flute to Indiaman comparison because the Galleon costs 300 more gold to produce and an additional 60 gold for upkeep, bringing the total to 1,710 gold per ship for production and 300 gold per turn for upkeep. But you are getting 12 more guns, 300 more hull strength, and a vastly increased reloading skill compared to the flute. Our last trade ship is specifically for the Eastern factions such as the Ottoman Empire, which, if you've been watching the Prussia playthrough, no longer exists. These are the cheapest and most fragile trade ships that are available in Empire Total War. They only have 2 guns and a hull strength under 1,000, but they can be mass produced and they are cheap on upkeep. For combat, you could use a swarm tactic since you might have quite a few of them. Enough about our vessels, let's talk about the types of shot we have available to these vessels. We have 3 types of shot: round, chain, and grape. Each has a specific usage during combat. Round shot is our main type of shot for any vessel. Its main purpose is to put holes into ships.
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
And will also inadvertently take out some of the crew. It is best used on the side of a ship in order to sink and take out cannons, reducing the combat power of an enemy vessel. A weakened hull will also contribute to a reduction in morale, possibly causing a rout of an enemy vessel. Chain shot is used to target enemy sails and masts. By doing this, you will be targeting their only way to maneuver, making them dead in the water, and an easy target. You should never use your chain shot unless your enemy sails are up, and even then it's more effective by targeting them from the bow or stern to maximize the target size. A broadside with an enemy's mast unfurled will most likely take out a single mast. Grape shot is used specifically to kill crew members. This will weaken their offensive power by killing their gun crews and musket armed marines. Grape shot should only be used when the enemy's vessel's hull is severely damaged and the crew is exposed. You should utilize round shot to soften the hull as you close in and change to grape. It is key to note that there are some vessels where the cannon crew is not protected by the hull, like a brig and galley, where you can utilize grape shot to take them out. Okay, we've talked about morale a few times while discussing our vessels and shot types. We're going to actually dive into that. Like in land battles, we do have to worry about our crew's morale so they stay in the fight as long as possible. Otherwise, they'll leave the field of battle and possibly lose us the battle. A routing ship will simply flee and not return fire on its pursuers. But a routing ship can also rally and rejoin the fight. It is important to pursue your enemy ships and shatter them. This will ensure you maintain your prize and reduce the chance of them returning to battle. Ships will route independently, but a mass rout can cause mass panic and create a full-on retreat. Morale shocks are going to be severe damage to the sails and hull, the ship's on fire, the admirals fled the battle, the admirals died, being attacked in the stern, having lost the majority of ship guns or not having enough crew to man them, having lost the majority of the crew, and the ship is just sinking. Morale boosts are going to be being close to the flagship, winning the current engagement, seeing an enemy ship rout, and attempting a boarding action, because seizing a ship is always fun.
Technology.
Let's discuss some of the more important technologies for your Navy. We're not going through all of the technologies, as some are just enhancing national prestige and important for scoring, but not for naval fights and economy. Flintlock cannons provide a reduction in your misfires and also speeds up the firing on your ship. Traditionally, cannons were fired with a slow burning match to a touch hole in the breech. At times, this could cause misfires and more dangerously, a hang fire, where the powder is burning but has yet to set fire to the main charge. Only two navies really adopted the flintlock cannons, the British Royal Navy and those that beat them, the United States Continental Navy, because Britannia no longer rules the seas. You're welcome! In-game, this technology provides a 5% reduction in cannon reloading time, giving you an edge when enemy nations have yet to research it. Next, we have our sextant and longitudinal watch. The sextant was a precision navigational tool that allowed skilled users to calculate latitude and track their bearings on a map. This allowed the sailors to have a more accurate reading on their location during night or day. Longitudinal watches kept excellent time, enabling sailors to calculate their longitude with a degree of certainty, further replacing dead reckoning, which can misplace a ship and her crew leagues out of position. In-game, the sextant technology provides an additional 5% movement range for ships on the campaign map, giving you the ability to outmaneuver your enemy before an engagement happens. The longitudinal watch provides an additional 10% range for ships on the campaign map. Next up, we have carronades, a short-barreled muzzle-loaded cannon that sat on the top deck of a ship with a reduced barrel. It also received less powder, thus reducing muzzle velocity, producing less recoil, and a lighter weapon. But it does come at a price. They are short-range weapons and only dangerous in close quarters. Historically, the HMS Victory did carry 68-pounder carronades and did immense damage to the French line at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. In-game, the carronade provides the player with the ability to build a carronade frigates. Great for early game, but are easily replaced once you are closer to mid-game. Copper bottoms and improved coppering. With our sailing ships being made of wood, in lies the problem with her being at sea. She may rot and become infested with sea life such as weeds, barnacles, and worms. Over time, these would rot away the hull, reducing top speeds at sea and even possibly allowing the bottom of the ship to just fall out. Coppering, or copper bottoms, is the process of nailing or bolting sheets of copper to the hull below the waterline. With copper being toxic to sea life that would attack the hull, this extended the ship's useful life, but it was only a partial solution. When nailed or bolted with iron, the copper and iron mixing with seawater would create a robust battery, causing the bolts and nails to rot away. In-game, copper bottoms are going to increase the recruitment cost of your vessels by 5%, but you will be gaining a 10% top speed during combat and an additional 5% movement range on the map. Improved copper bottoms will increase your recruitment cost by another 2%, but you will be getting a reduction of 2% upkeep, another 10% increase in your top speed during battles, and another 5% campaign movement range. Ordinary naval cannons were smooth bore, or just a simple tube that the powder and shot go into. With the advancement of machinery in the 19th century, cannon manufacturers were able to create a rifled barrel. This spin inside the chamber allowed for greater accuracy. In-game, you will see an additional 2% increased recruitment cost, but it will enable rifled cannons for your ships. Sheet lead cartridges. Traditionally, Powder was kept in the magazine deep inside the ship, carefully isolated away from any spark or flame that could ignite them. When going into action, the master gunner would provide small bags of powder weighted to the appropriate cannon size. These bags are then provided to the gun captain. This made loading safer and quicker. But we are talking about cloth bags here, and they get wet and they can also catch fire. This pushed for further inventions of how to properly ready the cannon for battle without a misfire, or the bag exploding. Eventually, this led to a soft lead canister that would be filled and bent closed by hand and then rammed into the barrel of the cannon. Then a sharp spike would be rammed into the touch hole and pierce the cartridge, allowing the shot to be fired. This led to a more reliable and safer reloading procedure. In game, we're going to see a 5% reduction in misfires to your naval cannons and a 5% reduction in reloading time for your vessel's gun crews. Top gallants are extra sails at the top of a mast, providing the ship with more sail area to catch wind and provide a higher top speed. These would be associated above the top mast, but top gallants can prove to be an issue for ships as it can provide a strain on the ship as a whole. In high winds, top gallants can do their job effectively enough to break apart the mast of a ship, causing significant damage. In-game, we'll see top gallant technology provide us with a 10% increase in top speed during battle and a 10% increase in movement range on the campaign map. I will note that these are for ships specifically with top gallants and not applied to all vessels. Preserve food. Keeping food fresh at sea requires preservation in some way. Meat, and to a lesser extent cheese, can be salted and stored for years, but this does ruin any flavoring. A ship could store biscuits, flour, and bread in barrels for a long period, but they might fall prey to weevils. French confectioner Nicolas Appert was able to pioneer the process of canning foods around 1804, becoming the first food bottling factory in the world. Utilizing champagne bottles imperfectly sealed with a mixture of cheese and mineral lime, then dunked into boiling water and boiled for what he deemed was appropriate for cooking the contents thoroughly. In 1810, Appert wrote The Art of Preserving Animal and Vegetable Substances, mainly because he was a poor businessman and the French government paid him to make the process public. In-game, the crews of our vessels will be mightily happier and fight against our enemies greater with an increased 2% morale in battle. Before leaving, I want to give you 2 small extra points for when you are in battle. The wind is the single most important piece of terrain in the naval battle. The wind gauge at the bottom of your screen shows its direction. A ship that has a windward advantage, meaning the wind is at your back, is faster and more maneuverable than a ship sailing leeward, into the wind. Always try to position your fleet to have the windward advantage at the start of battle, as it allows you to control the pace of the engagement. Different weather conditions also have a major impact. Heavy fog will drastically reduce visibility, making it easier to ambush the enemy. The second piece of advice is the crew experience. Just like on land, veteran crews are far superior to green ones. A ship's crew gains experience, they become more efficient at every single task. Veteran crews will reload your cannons faster, aim them more accurately, and trim the sails more effectively, allowing your ship to turn and accelerate more quickly. Most importantly, the morale is significantly higher. A veteran crew will continue to fight after taking heavy damage and suffering high casualties, whereas a green crew might surrender or rout under the same conditions. Preserving your experienced crews and ships is key to maintaining a dominant navy throughout your campaign. And there you have it. To master the world in Empire Total War, you must first master its oceans by understanding the unique roles of your frigates, your ships of the line, and your specialized vessels. You can build a fleet that not only wins battles, but secures a global empire. Use the wind, protect your veteran crews, and deliver that decisive broadside. If you'd like me to expand more on any historical items from our videos, drop a comment down below. I'll be happy to create an expanded video on the topic. Thank you for joining me on Scroll and Strategy. If you found this naval guide helpful, be sure to like and subscribe and tell us what your most glorious naval battle was. Now go forth and rule the waves.